Hello, BookTube. The early days of any month are always the time when booktubers do their TBRs, where they talk about the stuff that they want to read or dream of reading or hope to read in the upcoming month, books that look interesting to them. I love those videos. I absolutely do. There's hardly a type of video on BookTube that is more purely the dream state of the reader. I love looking at these ambitions, even if they're not fulfilled. I love knowing what people are dreaming of doing with their reading time in the upcoming month. And I would love to do that, but I can't. I can't on this channel because I do nothing but read. So the number of books that I read in a given month is always well north of 100. I can't make a video with 100 books in it. So what I do on this channel, I tend to do a TBR BY, a to be read by you, where I recommend 10 books for the coming month. And I was planning on doing that last week, and then there was that. If you were watching, if you've been trudging endlessly through these videos of mine, you remember, I think it was last Wednesday, I had a whole bunch of videos planned in the morning, you know, when I'm walking Frida for the first thing, when she finally gets out of bed. My girl does not like the mornings at all. When she finally gets out of bed and we go for our first walk, while we're walking, I usually wonder what I'm going to make videos about during the day. And the process for me is always eliminating ideas. I honestly don't understand booktubers who maybe have that same morning walk, and their question is, what can I do? The hardest thing for me is limiting the number of videos that I make in one day. I swear I can make 10 videos a day. And on that Wednesday, I had many things that I wanted to do. Many, many things. A comic book video, Wednesday reads, all sorts of other stuff. And one of the things that I wanted to do for that Wednesday was a TBR BY for August. And then in the afternoon, scary dark thunderstorms came through, and it threw me off completely. Like this was the 12th century instead of the 21st century. I was like, that completely threw me off. I made one video, and I was terrified the whole time. And I thought, okay, well, the timing of it, the mojo of it just didn't work, so we won't do it. So, you know, I just won't bother with it. I thought, naively, I guess, in retrospect, I thought nobody's going to notice and nobody's going to care. And boy, oh boy, did I learn otherwise. One of the wonderful side effects of constantly telling you all my email, you keep in mind, it's st.donahue@gmail. Email me at any time about any subject at any length. I get a lot of emails now because of this, but I will answer. I absolutely will. If I get your email, I will answer. One little technical tip that I've noticed, in your first email to me, if you've never emailed me at that email address before, probably don't include any links or photos, because I've noticed that my email just blocks them. And then I don't know about it, and then I seem rude when really I just never saw it. One of the benefits of urging you all to email me about whatever's on your mind is that if I make a misstep, I hear about it. And one of those missteps is that you definitely want an August TBR BY. So I'm going to do that now. It's still going to be an abbreviated version. The spirit for me has still gone out of it. And also, the books that I want to recommend to you here, in retrospect, now that I look at the list, they seem a little on the heavy side for what is, after all, technically the last month of August, or the last month of summer here in this hemisphere. So take that with a grain of salt. There are a whole bunch of mass markets, a whole bunch of escapist fare. Maybe I should make another TBR BY, but I'm going to be recommending that stuff all throughout the month anyway. So I want to recommend just a few things here for the month of August, and that will function as my TBR BY. And then next month, the end of August, when I do September, I will screw my courage to the sticking point and make it at the right time, right on the eve of the first of the month. So first we'll talk about a little fiction, because there's some good fiction, and also the highlight, fiction or nonfiction, the highlight of any book for the month is fiction. So first I want to recommend Mary Doria Russell. Mary Doria Russell is great. I want to recommend her just in general. Her new book is called The Women of the Copper Country. It's set in 1913 Calumet, Michigan. And it deals with strong women who kept a community running while their men went into mines or broke up, you know, or left to find better work. Mary Doria Russell's great subject here is strong pioneer women. And it's just an illustration of the fact that this author can do anything. She first broke into renown for science fiction. I myself am most fond of her entirely male-dominated novels about the gunfight at OK Corral and Doc Holliday. Those two books are amazing. They're just amazing. I reviewed one of them. It wasn't Doc. It was the one about the gunfight at OK Corral, which lasted virtually no time at all and has inspired so many novels. If I remember, and if I can find it, I will leave my my link to that review down below. I've noticed that half the time I forget because at 28 your mind starts to go, and the other half the time I'll be deviled if I can find my reviews. It drives me crazy when I know for sure that I reviewed a book. But the problem is when you're an Old Bailey hack, waiting for hire for anyone, then your reviews tend to show up in a lot of places, and it becomes hard at the spur of the moment to remember where they did show up. So, but if I can, I will leave a link. But this, The Women of Copper Country, is amazing. It's just amazingly good. This author, she broods over her sentences. She broods over her fiction. I just love it. I just love it. Then the next one we saw on this channel, it's by Zach Powers, and it's called The First Cosmic Velocity. And it's sort of an alternate historical novel about a Soviet space program that has been, in fact, a failure from the beginning. People go up, but they don't come back down. and in order to get around that, since the launches are always filmed, and the public, including the Soviet press agencies, are waiting for the triumphant return of the smiling cosmonaut, in order to get around the fact that the people who go up don't come back, this space agency in this novel is taken to employing identical twins. So that you have a double of your cosmonaut to trot out, upon mission accomplished. And that premise alone is hilarious, and the novel just goes on from there. It is high comedy, done for an extended period of time on the page, and that is very hard to do. Most writers don't even attempt it. There's nothing harder to do, even action sequences. There's nothing harder to do on a sustained number of pages than successful comedy, and this book does it, absolutely. Especially since the Soviet powers that be now want a demonstration that is far more personal in the course of the novel, something where there is no twin. The person, the animal involved doesn't have a twin. So what are you going to do? I just loved it. Just loved it. And I was kind of amazed. I mean, the premise is very high comedy, so I was expecting only that, but there's actually an emotional tug at the end of the book. There's a twist. About 8/10 of the way through the book that I didn't see coming, and that I didn't expect it to be. It was well done, and I didn't expect it to be so emotionally powerful. So I recommend the book. I guess in a way, it is a member of the constantly expanding cadre of books about the Apollo 11 mission. It has its 50th anniversary, and in 2019, in the summer of 2019, and that anniversary has been flushing into the publishing list. Not just books on that mission, but on endeavors into space at all, by anybody. And this, I guess, counts as one of those. Then the next book, historical fiction. This is The Golden Wolf by Linnea Hartsuyker. This is the third and final book in her Golden Wolf trilogy about a Viking named Ronald and his sister, Svanhild, and the bond that they have, and the fact that they go out and handle their worlds, their very separate worlds. And this is the concluding volume that sort of wraps up both their stories and the larger story of the world where Ronald has been working, as political and mercenary operative. And I have been a champion of this series from the beginning. I think that it's just incredible. I'm not 100% sure that the first book in the series, The Half-Drowned King, is even out in paperback. I don't know whether or not that's true. It might be that none of these are in paperback yet. But The Half-Drowned King, the first book in the series, if you haven't read any of them, The Half-Drowned King will be at your library. I'd be willing to bet. And boy, is it worth reading. These books, the author must have just dreamt them all in one unit. They are equal in quality, only as we go along, they become more riveting reading because the stakes are so much higher. You've lived with Ronald, and especially Svanhild, who, as a woman, has had far fewer choices at her disposal than her brother, and has worked them all amazingly. It's a kind of Viking series that no one has ever written before. I loved it. I loved the ending. I can't wait to see what this author does next. And I strongly recommend the trilogy. If you want to get lost in historical fiction trilogy, especially with a very strong female character, then you might want to try The Half-Drowned King and start there. I wouldn't start with The Golden Wolf or the second book. I would start at the beginning if you haven't read any of them. And then the last novel that I want to recommend is also the greatest novel of the month and one of the greatest novels of the year. And that is Eduardo Albinatti's The Catholic School. 1,200 pages long, a big brick of a thing. A lightly fictionalized account of an actual crime that took place in Italy 40 years ago, and that took place at the boys' school where the author himself attended. So right on the border of autofiction, and at this exorbitant length, I was thinking before I dipped into it that it had all sorts of strikes against it, and it blew me away. It is amazing, even in an English language translation. So I won't recommend it again. I won't talk about it again until I get a trade paperback 2 years from now. But I wanted one last time to recommend this book. It is no small undertaking. It's a big thing. It itself is as long as the whole of the Golden Wolf trilogy. But nevertheless, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the Golden Wolf trilogy, I think, is called the Golden Wolf Saga. So it's possible that the Golden Wolf is not the final volume. Oh my. Well, it read like a final volume. I hope it is, but we'll see. But one way or another, the Catholic School is not a small undertaking. It's a big thing. It's a challenge for you to carry in your bag on your commute. It's a challenge for you to rest on your sternum if you're reading in bed, but it's well worth it if you're in the mood for a very long haul of a novel. Then we'll move to history, do some history titles. The first one is Natural Rivals by John Clayton, and it's about John Muir, he'll be well known to a lot of you as the sort of the founder of American naturalism, founder of the idea of public conservation and nature writing, and an official called Gifford Pinchot, who won't be known to a lot of you unless you have studied the William Howard Taft administration, because it was a scandal involving this guy. And Pinchot was also, in his own way, a diehard, outspoken advocate of public conservation, public lands. And John Clayton does a great job of it. The book is, as you can tell from the title, the book is about their growing clashes in the realm where they are both trailblazers. But the book also functions as a wonderful dual biography. I don't think you'll get much better from Gifford Pinchot anyway. John Muir has had his fair share of books, but even there, even if you've read a number of those John Muir books and also his own books, you should read at least one John Muir book in your lifetime. Even if you've read all of that stuff, even if you're up on him, this is a book to add to your list because this story was really important in defining the legacies of both men. Then the next one I have here is Sudden Courage. We've seen it on this channel. It's by Ronald Rosbottom, and it's a very good, very specifically, granularly detailed study of young resistors to the Nazis during the occupation of France, and the brutal concessions that they had to make and the brutal ends that most of them came to. The author has done an incredible amount of research, and it doesn't swamp his book. Usually I look a little warily on authors who've done an incredible amount of, especially in this case, as far as I could tell, groundbreaking research. Usually I look a little wary on that because authors who do that tend to then let it flood their book, but nothing like that happened here. This was written with the story foremost in mind to begin with. Such a book. Oh, such a book. And the last one is also something that we've seen on this channel. It's by John Henderson, and it's called Florence Under Siege. And those of you familiar with Renaissance Florence history will think, okay, well, who is it now? But actually, it's disease. It's not one of Florence's innumerable terrestrial enemies. Instead, it's disease. It's the plague that kept making inroads into Florence, that kept coming back, blossoming in the summertime in virulent outbreaks, to the point where citizens who couldn't flee got used to it, and citizens who could flee did. Hence, we have the Decameron and a whole bunch of other stuff, a whole bunch of other literature, and it kept going. The plague kept revisiting Florence, not in apocalyptic levels, but still really bad for centuries. And this book is about that. It's not just about the outbreaks. It's about how this one city responds, almost biologically, to this thing that keeps happening to it. And I have read, I don't know how many books on Renaissance Florence, on historical Florence, and this one ranks right up there. Oh, it's just amazingly absorbing. So that you never, even with all the details involved, you never want to read to look away. You never feel like, oh boy, this feels like a history. I'm really hoping, actually, since I beat the crap out of my ARC, I'm really hoping I get a finished copy of the book, because I would like to add it to my personal, to the permanent collection. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And then we can move on to Science and Nature, the first one of which is a book that we've seen on this channel before. I hadn't read it when I showed it to you, but or I don't know, maybe I never showed you the advanced copy. Anyway, I wholeheartedly recommend it. Anyway, it's called Consider the Platypus. It's by Maggie Ryan Sandford with illustrations by Rodica Prato, and it's wonderful. It's a slightly oversized thing with each double-page spread is about a different species on Earth, and Consider the Platypus the title is sort of pointing you towards, the platypus is a legendarily odd animal, and for a whole bunch of reasons, not just the obvious ones about its physical appearance. And you look at that and you think, okay, well, I kind of know what this book is going to be. It's going to be chameleons, it's going to be giraffes, it's going to be narwhals, it's going to be all the odd-looking animals that are left in the world. But instead, the author very smartly goes in a completely different direction by saying that all animals are odd, obviously, that they all are, and that they're all worth learning about and even celebrating. And right there in the middle of the book is Homo Sapiens. So a two-page spread on Homo Sapiens, a little human baby raising its hand. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. Really, in its way, explosive. If you had taken this book and transported it back 200 years into a biology class or a nature class, the author would have been hauled before the nearest magistrate, and an answer would have been demanded from her. What on earth do you think you're doing? Just lumping human beings in with all these other animals. What on earth is that supposed to mean? That's virtually heresy. It's eye-opening, though, and really well done. And the other one, it kind of sort of falls under Science and Nature. I don't really know where else to put it. There's a book by Charles King called Gods of the Upper Air, and it is a long multi-biography and study of the founders of what we now call cultural anthropology, of the modern ideas of what anthropology is. It's Franz Boas, it's Margaret Mead, it's Zora Neale Hurston. It's a group of people going to more primitive or indigenous environments and promulgating what was then a relatively new and shocking idea that people make culture. There's no such thing as what I just said, a primitive culture. There's no such thing actually as that in terms of being written in stone. That culture is a response to the people who are constantly talking and living in it, and therefore relative. Which doesn't seem like much to us now, to the non-racist among us now, but it was explosive in its day, and the book tackles it in the trickiest way that you can do a big, comprehensive book of nonfiction, which is multi-biographies, where the author follows multiple biographies of these multiple people. That's really hard to do well. You get, for every great example that you get, like The Bully Pulpit by Doris Kearns Goodwin, you will get a bunch that don't succeed, where one life swamps the others. And that doesn't happen much in this book. So I want to recommend it if you're interested in anthropology, and especially how anthropology got to the way it is today, the way we just automatically think of it. And the last book I want to recommend for August, something I've already recommended to you strongly. I want to recommend it one more time, and then I'll stop talking about it. It's Lawrence Weschler's book, And How Are You, Dr. Sachs? It's a memoir, a personal friend's memoir of Oliver Sacks. So it's a biography. It includes as much comprehensive, verifiable biography as the author feels like including, but it's much more of an emotional account. And boy, oh boy, is it powerful. It really is. It takes you feel like you know Oliver Sacks at the end of this book in a way that I don't think you would feel with a straightforward, documentary, dry, and objective biography. And that's a very valuable thing. Not to say that the dry, objective biographies aren't valuable too, but it's also very valuable to get such an immediate sense of the person. And this really does. So I recommend it to you, but I also, if you are one of the many, many readers who love Dr. Sacks's books, then you got to read this thing. You absolutely have to. So if you look at your bookcase and The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat or whatever is something that you loved and go back to, then you've got to find this book at your library, bookstore, and read it, because you're going to love it. But I think anyone would love And that is it. That is it for now. Somewhat abbreviated. August 2019 TBR BY. Just because I wanted to do it, and apparently all of you wanted it too, because you let me know that. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.